I will forever and ever and ever buy the dip on the injury suspension labeled players when they have elite upsides. I think he's being drastically undervalued. In today's video, I'm ranking my top 40 or so Cornerstone Dynasty players. And by the way, we do have the 2025 rookie class in this video to help you get a gauge of how I value this class. I'm not going to include quarterbacks in these rankings because from a Superflex perspective, it would just be chocked full of quarterbacks, and I just don't think it would be that helpful. Now, the qualifier for today's video is that you have to be under the age of 25, meaning if you're 25 years old, you're not eligible for this video. That doesn't mean you're not a guy that you can build around long term, but you're just not eligible for today's video. Starting off with tier number 1, a player who stands alone, still under the age of 25 at the time of recording this, is Jamar Chase. Now, I don't want to waste everybody's time and talk about how good Jamar Chase was this year, but in case anybody forgot, he averaged over 23 points per game, almost 24 points per game, and he was the only wide receiver in fantasy football who averaged over 20. He was the only wide receiver in fantasy football who averaged over 19. He was absolutely incredible in a tier of his own, no questions about it. Will get a huge contract this offseason to be with Joe Burrow long term. Moving on to tier number 2. This is a big tier, and I would honestly label all of these names untouchables. 100,000% all untouchable names. Names like Jahmyr Gibbs, who this year broke out to another level, averaged 21.3 points per game on the entirety of the season. And if you look at that money stretch from week 8 onwards, averaged 22.5 points per game, who was tied with Bijan Robinson in the money stretch with, again, 22.5 points per game from week 8 onwards. These two second-year running backs with incredible draft capital won people their dynasty leagues and are also going to do it for the next couple years, maybe 3, 4, 5 years. These are guys that if you're trading them away, you are asking for someone's left arm. You're asking for their second-born son. All right, they're just not moving off of your dynasty teams. We've also got Puka Nacua, who had an interesting season, dealt with some injuries, and I know people are going to be concerned about that injury tag, but man, when this guy is healthy, there is nobody in the NFL that can stop him. People are going to discredit him because they don't know how long Matthew Stafford's going to be there, but the reality is, Puka Nacua is an elite player in the NFL. I mean, there is no questioning that at this point. From week 8 onwards, he averaged 19.8 PPR points per game, almost 20 points per game in that stretch. He's clearly the number 1 alpha in Los Angeles. Cooper Kupp is potentially moving on in the offseason. Even if Cooper Kupp stays, it doesn't matter. This is Puka Nacua's team. He is that dude on this roster. We've also got 2 rookie wide receivers who went absolutely bananas this season in Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas Jr. Wherever you guys have these ranked, they need to be by each other. I don't care if Malik Nabers is your wide receiver 3. Brian's got to be right by him. You cannot have Malik Nabers in a conversation without Brian Thomas Jr. They have to be right beside each other. Honestly, they have to be. Malik Nabers had an incredible season, averaged 18.2 points per game. But if you look from week 8 onwards, again, the money stretch, which is where we really try to predict future seasons. From week 18 onwards, Brian Thomas averaged 17.5 points per game, which was 0.1 points per game more than Malik Nabers. Now, of course, Malik Nabers had worse quarterback play by how much, guys? If we're being honest, all right, come on, let's be so for real right now. It's not like Brian Thomas had the best version of Trevor Lawrence. Brian Thomas had Mac Jones for a time. Of course, Mac Jones might be better than, what Malik Nabers dealt with, but let's not pretend like it's all sunshine and rainbows over in Jacksonville, okay? 2 elite players with elite upsides for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Guys that you can build around long term, guys that will win you multiple fantasy championships. We've also got Brock Bowers in this range. You can't have tier 2, the untouchable tag, without Sir Brock Bowers, who set ridiculous rookie records, 153 targets on the season, almost 1,200 receiving yards, had 5 touchdowns, 15.5 points per game. He was absolutely fantastic this entire season, and that's with Aiden O'Connell, right? I mean, that's with, there were so many, Desmond Ridder, if I'm remembering correctly, right? I mean, they're going to figure out the quarterback position at some point, and sure, they're going to add another wide receiver to compete for targets with Brock, but Brock is going to be the 1A, 1B in this offense. It's not like this team is going to add, let's just say they add Luther Burden, just as an example. They add Ted McMillan. That doesn't mean Brock Bowers is going to go away. He probably still out-targets those names. He is that elite of a player. No season like this in history, and this is not Kyle Pitts. He actually helped you win your fantasy championship. He's going to do it again. And the last name, 2025 rookies here, Ashton Genty. Yes, I do think he is worthy in my evaluation process of being in this tier number 2. I think he's an elite prospect. He's the only player in this year's class for me who has that elite prospect tag. Don't have that tag on any other player in this class. You know, ridiculous season. I think he should have won the Heisman personally. That's not to discredit Travis Hunter, by the way, because he had an incredible season, but I believe he's going to be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. This is Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs type draft capital and type prospect, but obviously, you know, not the same. I mean, he's got a lot of CMC to him. He's got a lot of Dalvin Cook to him, Alvin Kamara. He's just this combination, this beautiful blend of all these incredible fantasy assets. And I think he's absolutely deserving of being in this tier. We are helping hundreds and hundreds of people get a game plan for their Dynasty offseason with the Dynasty Playbook. If you want to gain access to a Dynasty Playbook, there's 2 ways you can do so. First way is by becoming a yearly Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND. You get the best bang for your buck, all the premium tools, the rankings, our 2025 rookie report, and a team playbook. The other option is by purchasing one a la carte through the Flock Fantasy website. If you're on a different promo code or whatever the case may be, both of those links are in the pinned comment. Let's get back to the video. All right, let's head into tier 3. If tier 2 is Untouchables, let's say tier 3 are these really solid, solidified building blocks for your roster. Names like Drake London. London was extremely consistent this season. Despite pretty bad quarterback play from Kirk Cousins, he still took a huge step up. We love him as a prospect, love that draft capital, gonna get that long-term contract. And then we saw in only his 3rd game with Michael Penix in week 18, he had a 40 burger, 40 points, 18 targets, 10 catches, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, Darnell Mooney wasn't playing, but you're just scratching the surface here with what's possible for Drake London and Michael Penix in the future. Now, the next player might be controversial. I don't care. You're coming to my channel to hear my opinion, so I'm going to say it with my chest out. Rashee Rice. All right, that's right. Rashee Rice. He's a very easy name for the Dynasty community to hate on. I get it. His off-field activities are not something that I would like to represent, okay? But as an asset in Dynasty football, I think he's being drastically undervalued. From weeks 1 to 3, before he went down with that injury, he was a wide receiver 2 overall in fantasy football, averaging over 21.5 points per game. He averaged more points per game in that span than Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins. He averaged more points per game than Chris Godwin, who was on a tier, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was on an absolute heater, and I just don't think we are giving him enough value in the Dynasty community because of the injury, because of the suspension. I will forever and ever buy the dip on the injury suspension labeled players when they have elite upsides like Rashee Rice showed us in 2024. Right behind him, I have Lad, the space creator McConkey, one of my favorite players in the 2024 class. What a rookie season from Lad. Top 12 finish in fantasy football, and on a points per game basis, he actually finished wide receiver 19. But from week 8 onwards, that money stretch where, you know, you have guys winning you fantasy football leagues, he was one of those names averaging 17.8 points per game. He was absolutely fantastic only in his rookie season, building chemistry with Justin Herbert. I think he's the #1 wide receiver for this team moving forward. And I just don't see a scenario in this class where this team has a wide receiver addition that impacts Ladd McConkey to the point where he shouldn't be valued right here. Right after that, we'll put Marvin Harrison Jr., who, by all accounts of the words, was a bust in fantasy football this year. I mean, I'm not going to call him a bust as a prospect. He's only a rookie. He still had almost 900 yards. He still had 8 touchdowns, but he only averaged 11.6 points per game. So you're just completely lying to yourself if you don't think it was a disappointment. Now, here's the thing. This was not all on Kyler Murray, all right? Marvin Harrison did not play up to his own standard. I do think he's going to be much better, and I think he has a bright future ahead of him. I'm not willing to lower him more than this because of how much I believe in him as a prospect. Right after that, we have Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had an incredible money stretch this year from week 8 onwards. JSN averaged 17.7 points per game, which, by the way, again, from week 8 onwards, was more points per game than Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Terry McLaurin. I mean, the guy was balling out of his freaking mind. DK Metcalf was dealing with an injury, and they have changed offensive coordinator. I don't know why they got rid of Ryan Grubb. I thought it was working. At first year, I liked what I saw, but that's the only reason I can't move him higher than this, because there are some question marks around quarterback play long term. There are some question marks around what the offensive coordinator will want to do, but I do think he absolutely had a breakout, and he will be this team's #1 moving forward. After that, we have Garrett Wilson, who, despite all the talks about a disappointing season, still was pretty impressive. So, a lot of people said he could finish top 5. He could be the #1 wide receiver. We didn't see that, but we still saw career highs in, receptions and receiving yards and touchdowns. He had almost 15 points per game, but he still only finished wide receiver 21. And, we still don't know what the long-term future of this quarterback position looks like in New York. So he's still kind of stuck in purgatory. Right after that, we have 2 running backs that I believe are definitely building blocks you can build around long-term. Bucky Irving, Devon Achane. I have spoken so highly about Bucky Irving in recent videos, so I won't waste your time with it. But all I will say is, if you want to know why I'm so obsessed with Bucky Irving, go check out this video. I have my editor put a screenshot up. It's a recent trade video. Go check that out, because it's a 6-minute take, all right? So go check that video out. Right after that, we have Devon Achane, who was absolutely fantastic. I mean, with Tua in the lineup, he was one of the best running backs in fantasy football, point blank, period. He probably leads the league in targets. If Tua played every single game, he was second right behind Alvin Kamara with 87 targets this year. He was fantastic. I mean, it wasn't as efficient. It wasn't as dynamic. There weren't as many big plays, but the offensive line wasn't great in Miami either. All right, moving on to tier number 4. Now, there are 2 veterans in this tier, and the rest of this tier is chocked full of 2025 rookies. We've got Breece Hall here, and we've got Kyren Williams. 2 running backs that I do believe you can consider, part of your 2 to 3 year window type of plans in your dynasty football leagues, right? Young enough, talented enough, have shown us really good fantasy seasons in the past. For Breece Hall, wasn't the best season, but still shined in big games. And for Kyren Williams, not the same efficiency as we saw last year, but the offensive line wasn't exactly where it needed to be. And both of these guys, you find it difficult to see all the team needs on these 2 teams and think about them spending a pick on a running back. Now, we also have a huge group of rookie players. For example, Ted McMillan out of Missouri, a player who I think can be one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. I also think he's versatile. I think he can play outside. He's incredibly good after the catch. I don't think people give him enough credit because of his bad season with bad quarterback play. Ted McMillan, who is an incredible player in his own right. This Drake London, Mike Evans prototype who could be absolutely incredible at the next level given the right landing spot. Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson, this huge group of running back prospects that I'm absolutely obsessed with. Guys that I think could be in that untouchable category if they get the right landing spot, the right draft capital, and have incredible rookie seasons. Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, both these guys who just miss tackle force machines. They turn lemons into lemonade on a daily basis. Travion Henderson, who could absolutely break fantasy football as a dual threat weapon. He could be one of these guys who could be getting 70 plus, 80 plus targets per year. He is such a weapon after the catch. Then we've also got Travis Hunter, who I don't know how to rank right now because, quite frankly, if he played wide receiver full time, he'd probably be right ahead of Garrett Wilson. Like, if you want me to be honest, all right? That's how good I think he is as a prospect, as a wide receiver, but we don't know exactly where he's going to be playing in the NFL. Now, we've also got Rome Odunze to end this tier number 4, stuck in a JSN rookie season type of situation, but with Ben Johnson being hired there for the Chicago Bears, I am very excited to see what Ben Johnson and that bright offensive mind, I'm excited to see what his plans are for Rome Odunze, this incredible elite asset, elite prospect who just didn't get on the same page with Caleb Williams this offseason. I'm very, very excited to see his second year. This entire tier, and exactly where I rank all these rookies, will be determined by draft capital, will be determined by landing spot. That will be the ultimate determiner for exactly where I rank these names. All right, moving on to tier number 5, we've got Ken Walker here, who the only reason Ken Walker isn't in tier 4 is because I do have some question marks around what they plan to do with Zach Charbonnet long-term. Zach Charbonnet actually has a longer contract on the books than Ken Walker. Ken Walker's been absolutely fantastic when he starts, but so has Zach Charbonnet. Will a new offensive coordinator see more reason to split their opportunities I just have some question marks that I think are at least valid to ask. And Ken Walker definitely thrives on big time plays. I think Zach Charbonnet is a little bit more consistent. What if the next offense coordinator really wants to split these guys, which would be very successful for NFL purposes? Right after that, we have Chris Olave, incredibly talented prospect who was stuck in a shit situation. We've talked about that for a while. Sam Laporta, another tight end comes off the board here. Not the season we were expecting. After finishing tight end 1 in 2023, he comes out in 2024 and finishes as the tight end 9. Not exactly what we were wanting to see. I will say, from week 8 onwards, the money stretch, he averaged over 13 points per game, so it was much more promising. He was dealing with injuries, but man, long term, it's tough to really know exactly how to value him. We also have Quinshon Judkins here in tier 5, who I'm a big fan of. I don't think he's as good of a prospect as the Omarion Hamptons, Caleb Johnsons, Trayvon Hendersons, but I do still think he's a very, very good player. And depending on draft capital, you could put him straight into tier 4 if he gets the right situation. Jordan Addison, who has had an incredible second half of the season with the Minnesota Vikings. From week 8 onwards, the wide receiver 21 on a points per game basis, which 15.2 PPR points per game. Right after that, we have Emeka Egbuka, who absolutely dominated in the college football playoffs. Just a very safe prospect. I see a ton of Robert Woods to his game. And then we have 2 rookie tight ends in Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren. I don't care which way you rank these guys. They both have, their strengths and weaknesses. And I'm a big fan of Colson Loveland as a receiving threat. Moving on to tier number 6 here. We won't go through this tier in depth, but we have names like Chase Brown, who I'd love to put higher. Honestly, guys, if the Bengals don't draft the running back in the first 4 or 5 rounds, I will put Chase Brown much higher. I can recognize that. But as of right now, this is where I would rank him. Then we have a really good group of wide receivers like George Pickens and Zay Flowers and Jameson Williams and Xavier Worthy. Guys who are probably never going to be wide receiver 1s in Dynasty football, but are really reliable, fringe wide receiver 2s. Then we've got 2 rookie wide receivers in Jalen Royals and Matthew Golden. 2 prospects that I really, really love. I actually just finished scouting Matthew Golden, and I can't say more positive things about him. I see a ton of Brandon Cooks to his game. Young Brandon Cooks, coming out of the college football ranks, was a very reliable target, and all he did was produce. I think Matthew Golden could do the same thing in the NFL, and I'm obsessed with Jalen Royals. I see a ton of Rashee Rice to his game. Such a dynamic, athletic, explosive, just playmaking threat. I can't wait to see him in the NFL. And we will finish off with some honorable mentions, guys who are fighting for a spot here. Names like Khalil Shakir. What's the Bills' long-term plan for that wide receiver room? Jaden Reed, you could say the same thing. Jalen McMillan. Will they re-sign Chris Godwin, or will they let McMillan shine as a wide receiver too? Josh Downs with quarterback play. Keon Coleman. Again, same situation in Buffalo. Ricky Pearsall, difficult situation in San Francisco. And Zach Charbonnet, who, again, if they split opportunities, he and Ken Walker should not be that far apart. So those are my Cornerstone rankings. I appreciate you guys watching. Do me a favor, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content, and let me know what you think in the comment section below. Anything you think I'm missing on, I'm hitting on, let me know, but do it with respect, obviously. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Nothing but love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.